It's here. Don't tell anyone, but it's here. The new version 17 of Resolve brings some UI bugs and some issues like that, as some of the recent updates have, but it brings the one thing that I was really missing from Adobe Premiere Pro when I switched for my workflow over the past couple years. Presets. Yes, finally, presets. But they keep them a secret, so we gotta keep this on the DL, okay? Instead of being able to right-click on a property in the inspector menu and create, click create preset as you can with virtually anything in Premiere Pro, you have to use Fusion. I know, it's scary, but our resident Fusion expert, Patrick, is going to show you how in a really neat tutorial here. It can seem daunting at first, but once you practice and, get it going a couple of times and get rolling, you're going to save so much time in DaVinci Resolve. I'll let him show you. The EVGA XR1 brings quality audio and ease of routing to your game streams, featuring a high-quality headphone amp, party chat capture, easy volume mixing right on the card, 4K pass-through, and uncompressed 1080p 60 FPS capture. Get your stream started today. Fast and easy with the EVGA XR1 capture card. Use affiliate code EposVox at checkout to get up to 10% off at the link below.
Hi, I am back to talk to you all about presets and transitions in DaVinci Resolve, but not my presets and transitions, yours. I thought it was time to walk through the powerful systems that exist in DaVinci Resolve for you to create your own titles, generators, effects, and transitions. Now first, what this video is not going to be, we're not going to talk at all about scripting in Lua or Python to create custom plugins. That is a whole area of functionality I haven't explored at all. What we are going to talk about is leveraging the powerful macro system in the Fusion page to create all those assets that we can use drag and drop on the edit page. It's super powerful and I've been wanting to tell you all about it for a while. Now is the time. So let's start by going over the very basics of what a Fusion macro is and how we can work with it. I'm here in the Fusion page and I've built out a very simple node tree. Let's look at what it does. We have this text that's going into a transform node, which is having it wiggle around the screen. Info and how I achieved this wiggle effect is in a recent video, highly recommend that. But that is also going into a brightness node afterwards, which is flickering the opacity as it moves around the screen. And now watch what we are able to do with macros. If I select these two nodes, right click and go to macro, create macro, I get this prompt. And if we don't mess with anything here, I'll name this cool one. When you go to close, you'll get this prompt to save it. You can click yes. It'll take you to this default macro position. You can check your file name, click save, and then now check this out. If I create a new text plus node and type in something else, and preview that instead, and disconnect that from the media out, drag this text, and then with that new text selected, I can pull up a search for tools with shift space, and if I start typing cool, you'll see here we have that cool one macro. I'll click enter to add, and you'll see it adds that effect. So now our text is moving around the screen and flickering. This is the core macro functionality, combining nodes together so that you can quick access them later. And this can be super useful if you're doing repetitive tasks or you need to apply the same effect just multiple times in a row or at any time in the future. You can package up any number of nodes into a macro and drop it right at any other point in your node tree. But from here, things get exciting because the functionality starts expanding. Let's look at our first step forward. This is great, but say I wanted to go back and see what nodes were a part of the effect. I couldn't do that here, but I could do that. I will delete that node, come back to our original two nodes, right click, macro, create macro. I'm still not gonna mess with any settings or labelings, but I'm gonna come up to File and go to Save as Group. That'll take us to that same location, and this will just be cool too. You click save, you can close the prompt, and then now if I add that to our second text, cool 2, you'll see the node that I brought in looked pretty different, and this is actually a group node. And if you double click on that, you'll see all of the nodes that are inside of it, and you could go into any of these, change them, or even add nodes to that. But this could be a little complicated. These are powerful nodes, and we're only using one small part of the functionality to achieve this effect. So now what we can do is actually add some custom controls. I'll delete that, go back to these two nodes, right click, create macro, and this will be cool 3. And now we can look at what we have here. Underneath this, you see a layout of all the nodes and modifiers used in whatever scenes that you are grouping together for your node. So we have our transform node, our brightness and contrast node, and then this shake and perturb are actually the modifiers I put on those nodes to achieve this effect. This perturb node is it moving around the scene, so I'm going to drop this down, and I'm going to check the boxes next to X and Y scale, and check the box next to speed. And this shake is a modifier on this brightness and contrast node, so I'm going to check that down and just check smoothness. And now if we save as a group, it'll save to that default location. Save, close. And if we add that into our second one, grab cool 3, you'll see that now if we select this group of nodes, over here in the inspector, we have some of those custom controls. So this smoothness is actually tied to the smoothness of the flicker on opacity. So if I crank that up, it'll be more smooth coming in and out. And if I pull it down a lot, it'll be much more flickery. And the same for these. This X and Y scale is the X and Y scale on this position move. So if I just pulled back this Y scale to 0, it'll only be moving back and forth on the X axis. The opposite is true, only on the Y axis. And if we increase these, the more it'll move around the screen. And the speed is tied to that as well. If I pull down the speed, it'll just sort of lazily move around, or up the speed, it'll be all over the place. That's super cool. One small addition on that you might have noticed. If I go back, grab these two nodes, make a macro, create macro, cool 4. When I checked all of these boxes, I checked this smoothness here, you have a text field afterwards, and you can actually change this. I can change this to flicker smoothness. And the other ones on perturb, I can do X and Y scale, and then I'll change speed to maybe wiggle speed. And then now I save that as a group to that location, save, close. If I add in cool 4, then now we have custom controls in the inspector, but you'll see it brought in those new labels. Very cool, very powerful right off the bat. This could simplify your process. If you have extremely complicated node trees, you could bundle them up, custom controls, change it at any time. And the macros you are saving, they're all just text files that you could save, that you could ship to your friends, that you could share with anyone else online, any other creators. It's pretty amazing. But now let's talk about how to bring this functionality to the edit page in a few different ways. And to do that, I'm going to recreate the effect that I use on all of my videos for my face to put it down in the corner. You're probably watching it right now. This is what we're gonna make. And to do that, we're gonna start just with this clip from a past video of mine. I'm going to take that into the Fusion page. And here you can see this media in is our clip, the media out, sending it back to the edit page. And so reasonably, the first part of creating any preset or template that you want to use on the edit page is just constructing it in the Fusion page. So let's do that pretty quickly. With this media in selected, I'm going to select this rectangle mask node, increase this so it's a little around my face, and in the inspector, I'm just going to pull up corner radius a bit. That's great for now. Coming out of the media in, I'm going to add a transform node that will just shrink this down, put it down in the corner. That's great. Coming out of the transform node, I'm also going to add a drop shadow. And the controls for that are in the inspector, the amount of blur, the distance you can change. All of these to whatever looks best for you. And there we have our effect. You absolutely could hop into the Fusion page and recreate this effect very quickly every time you wanted to use it. Or you could just make it a preset like this. There's one really interesting thing that's going to be going on here. We are going to be including this media in node in our macro. And we're going to be telling Resolve that this media in is whatever clip we drop the effect on in the edit page. So even now we're using it on this specific clip, it recognizes it as a media in node. And because we are going to be using it as an effect on the edit page, Resolve knows to swap out whatever clip we add it to for the clip used in this example. So I'm just gonna select these 4 nodes, right click, macro, create macro. And now we have the whole process that we've gone through previously, we can do that here. This will just be cool cam. We're gonna have some custom controls. This rectangle is the mask, so we're gonna come down to width and height and corner radius. I'll even change these labels to mask width, mask height, and mask corner radius. You can close this arrow at any time, and then coming out of that, I'm going to grab in the drop shadow these few controls here, and in the transform, just center and size should be great. And then file, save as group. And I'm actually not gonna save this here to our default macros position. I have created instead a folder on my desktop. You can save this anywhere, and right after we're actually going to install this in Resolve so that we can use it on the edit page. But I'll just click save there. You can close the prompt. And if I open that folder, you'll see that is saved as this little setting file here. And now to install that on the Fusion page, if you open your effects library, underneath there, you'll see edit templates. Check that down, and we are going to effects, and you'll see all of the effects on your system currently. But then you can actually grab that setting file for the macro, the effect you just created, and I'm just gonna drag that over there, and you'll see this window eventually refresh. That means it's installed. And then now, if we go back to the edit page, I grab a fresh copy of this file, of this clip of me from a previous video, and I go in the effects library on the edit page, down to effects, and here, cool cam. You'll see a little bit of a preview, but I can also drop that right on, and you'll see it works. And all this black is actually transparent. If I grab another clip, like this little gameplay clip, drop it down, you'll see that it works. We even have that little drop shadow. It's a little hard to see here, but if we click that, we have this effects tab with all the custom controls we brought over. And one interesting thing to note, you do still have video controls here, all your custom transform, and these will act on the source footage before it applies the effect. So if I change the zoom, it is actually changing the zoom inside the effect. Same for position. This is great for repositioning any shift in angles. If I slump or move around or whatever, I can just do subtle shifts here, and then I can go over to the effects tab and control those other things like the mask height, the corner radius, drop shadow, or even further position if I want this to move around the scene or scale up and down. And you can even come over here to this drop-down menu, toggle down, and if you go to Fusion Overlay, you'll have tactile controls for some of these. Like here, you can just manually grab it, drag it around. This overlay, it's a little funky position because of how Fusion brought it in. But this is also this mask overlay, which you can stretch any way you want if you don't want to mess with these sliders over here. All right, that is very cool. And this specific functionality, bringing things into the edit page as a Fusion effect, is actually something that only arrived in the most recent update to DaVinci Resolve, Resolve 17. It added this functionality. There were some workarounds earlier, but they were funky. This is much better, and this is super powerful. And people are really only beginning to dive into this full power. A lot of my presets use this and try to make everything drag and drop. My YouTube end screen is now this drag and drop effect. Any progress bar can be a drag and drop effect. I've made videos about both of those. But this is still just one portion of this complete preset and macro functionality. You'll remember we dragged this in as an effect. And on the edit page, you have three main categories. You have these effects, transitions, and then you have titles and generators, which I combined together. And next, we're gonna talk about that category, titles and generators, because they function exactly the same. The titles folder and the generators folder are largely just for organization. So to demonstrate, let's actually hop back into this composition with our text floating around the screen, and I'll come up to where it's these three nodes of our text node, our transform node, and our brightness and contrast node. And the thing to note here is that we don't have that media in node. We're not dealing with any actual footage. We are dealing with things completely constructed and built on the Fusion page. So I'm gonna select all these three nodes, right click, macro, create macro, and this will be cool title. And then we'll just select a few things like the styled text, font, and size. And then those other settings we had selected earlier, like the perturb, we are using X, Y, and speed. And on shake, we are using that smoothness. I would recommend always labeling these, but I showed off labeling. Let's show you how this really functions. Right click, save as group. Again, I'm saving this just to my little folder here. You can save this anywhere you want. Save, and then close out of that. And then cool title, again on the effects library, edit templates titles, drag in cool title. It will refresh that window. And then I can go on to the edit page. Now, when we were dealing with effects, we needed a source clip to drag that effect onto. With titles and generators, you don't. When you drag them from the effects library, they will create their own clip. If I come to titles, you'll see right there, cool title. If I drag that onto the timeline, you'll see that by default, it creates this 5-second clip where our text just wobbles around the screen and flickering in as well. And if we click that, in the inspector, we have all those custom controls we set up. So you could change the text, change any of this size, scale, smoothness, whatever you want. And I dropped this in as a title only because it has text. You could easily have this be any shape in your scene, wobbling around and flicking it out. Maybe it would work better as a generator in that case. All right, and the last major use case we are going to touch on is transitions. You can completely build your own custom transitions from scratch. So I have hopped back into the Fusion page and I'm going to start building out a simple transition. And this will be interesting because I'm going to be building a transition without any actual footage. And then we're going to swap out media in nodes to tell Resolve what to reference. Just like the effect needed a media in node to tell it, hey, when you drop this on a clip, swap out that clip. Transitions naturally include two clips, the clip it's transitioning from and the clip it's transitioning to. So we're gonna need two media in nodes, and how they interact is what will create our transition. But to help us out while we are building, I am just going to create two background nodes. Our first one will be blue, and our second one will be red, and I'm going to connect the outputs of those nodes to create this merge and connect that to our media out. So you'll see what's happening here. Our first clip, this blue, is going into the merge, and then our second clip currently is being laid over top that. So however we affect this red background, that is how our second clip that we are transitioning to will be shown. So coming out of this background, I'm just going to create a simple transform node. And in a big update to how transitions are made in Resolve, also in the recent update, Resolve 17, they rolled out something called the Anim curves modifier. It's super powerful, and very quickly, this is what it does. You can rig it up with a simple animation, and it will execute that animation over the duration of whatever clip it's on, or in this case, over the duration of your transition. So if you have a motion you like, if you have a transition, and on the edit page you shrink that to just be 2 frames, the animation will happen very quickly. If you stretch it out, it'll take much longer. So how we're gonna do that is in this transform, on the center, we're gonna right click, go to modify with vector result. This is a necessary step to get to the Anim curves modifier. That's the real power here. And you can see those controls by hopping over to the modifiers, and you'll see the motion we're gonna have is if you pull down this distance and we zoom out a little bit, you'll see that now our clip is off to this left side of the screen. And if we take this distance back to 0, you'll see that's where we want to end. We just want to have that horizontal slide. So how we're gonna do that, I'm gonna right click on distance, go to modify with Anim curves. And instantly you'll see this start to affect it. And by default, what it's actually doing is taking this video, it's starting completely over the screen and it's sliding off to the right. And you'll see that is because of this scale setting here. By default, this always goes from 0 to 1 on whatever figure it's on. But remember, we slid that offset slider from -1 to 0, which is still a move of 1, but you'll see under this, we have this offset, and we actually want to offset this by -1. And then now, over the course of our clip, our second clip just slides in. That's great. And from here, you can do some fun things like setting up a little bit of easing. I'm just using cubic here, and over on tools, if you jump to settings, you can even turn on a little bit of motion blur. And the last thing we're gonna do here is actually create 2 media in nodes, media in 1, which we'll swap out for our blue background here. You'll see you will get this red error message because it is not referencing any actual footage. It's an empty media in node. But remember, this is just going to be signaling Resolve on the edit page for which clips to include in this composition. And we're going to create a second media in node as well. Swap that out for our red background. And then we're going to be packaging up these 4 nodes all together. Right click, macro, create macro. And this will be our cool transition. And I'm not gonna mess with any of these settings or give the user any other control. We really only have that one slide in, simple control. So we'll just go to File, Save As, save in the same demo folder, cool transition, save. And then if I pull up that folder, remember here in the effects library, edit templates, transitions, we're grabbing cool transition, dropping it right in. It will refresh that window. And then if we go back to the edit page, I've set up this simple scene over here where we have gameplay into me talking. And if I come over to video transitions all the way at the bottom, we have these fusion transitions. And here we have my cool transition. I'll just drop that in. And we can scale in a bit, and you'll see over the course of that transition, this second clip slides into place. And because of the Anim curves, if I shrink this, it'll slide in quickly. If I stretch it out, it'll slide in much slower. Awesome. And you saw that was a simple transition, but if you followed along, you built it from scratch, and you can build out as complicated a transition as you want and just have it be drag and drop on the edit page. And again, these files are super easy to share. They're super easy to package up if you create a bundle that you think other people will find value in, and you could even sell that to other Resolve users. The methods I've very quickly gone over here are super valuable, super powerful, and people are only really just beginning to explore what they can mean for the future of Resolve, the future of editing in this software. So if you're interested at all, I highly encourage you to jump in, start creating your own templates, your own presets. I'm sure you have amazing ideas that would be super valuable to other creators. And this is all dependent on the Fusion page, so if you're interested in diving in there, I have a great intro to the Fusion page that I highly recommend. And then another video where I spell out how to look at the included free templates in the Fusion page, how to break those apart so that you can teach yourself some of the really powerful tricks that they showed off there. This is just an intro to these tools. In the presets I've made, I've learned so much. There are so many different nooks and crannies and powerful features. The ability to control any macro in the inspector is super powerful, and you can build things to swap between textures or between images or shapes or logos, all these different things on the edit page. My new preset proto shows off some wild organization on the edit page that I didn't think was possible. And I'm so excited for all the new development we'll see in this area really over the next few years. I'm super excited to show this to all of you. I hope you're excited to dive in. Thanks. I'll see you next time.